Today, we are taking a break from openings and we are going to be looking at a game. Of course, every game has an opening, and this game features the Stonewall Dutch. So, yes, I know we've talked about the Stonewall Dutch. I made an opening video, made a games video, making another video. But the difference is this is going to be the Stonewall from the white perspective. So, in fact, it starts with the best move in chess, f4, and then it transposes into a Stonewall. So I made a ton of videos on this setup. I'm sure you guys are familiar with the structure, and the same rules apply. However, white is playing the Stonewall, meaning white is a tempo up. And ironically, I actually like the Stonewall much better for black. I don't know why that is. I guess I just don't like the tempo. You might say that doesn't even make any sense. You would be correct, but chess also does not make any sense. So I don't know. Up a tempo just doesn't feel right. I like being down a tempo, just seeing where to rotate based on my opponent's move, if that makes any sense. So here black plays pawn to b6. Do you guys remember why pawn b6 is played when the knight is still on b8? See, if this knight was on d7 and they played b6, the reasoning would be bishop to b7. However, an early b6 means they want to go bishop a6. Remember, dark squared pawn chain, dark squared bishop is bad. Vice versa, light squared bishop is good. So with the knight still on b8, black is saying, hey, I want to trade off your good bishop and leave you with your garbage bishop. Sensible decision. So to stop bishop a6, there are a couple of ways. You could go queen a4, but remember, on the Dutch, you want to attack on the king side. So bringing your queen over to the queen side far out of the action is not recommended. Queen e2 would then be recommended. You patch the hole on the queen side while leaving your queen on the king side ready to attack at a moment's notice. Now here, black plays bishop f5. And remember, had they played a5 and they were like, no, we are trading bishops, a5 is an overextension. See, they pushed a5 and c5. Pawns never move backwards. Make them regret giving up the b5 square. So kind of clamp down on it. Then you can plant a knight there. So they'll get the favorable bishop trade, but you'll gain a outposted square. Very positional, very good for the knight. So it's a trade-off, you can't have everything in life. Some good, some bad. Count the good. So bishop to f5, offering up that light squared bishop trade. It wouldn't make sense to decline the trade. Like if you go bishop b5, they're just going to start expanding in the center and kicking you back. You also don't want to let them trade on your own terms because, then you just lose a tempo for moving your queen in the first place, right? 2 queen moves if that trade happens. So favorable trade, take. Now, black is going to argue that these are good doubled pawns, and you're going to tell him, what are you talking about? Those are not good doubled pawns. And whoever plays better chess will stand correct. So the pawn on f5, it has full control over e4, so they're going to plant a knight on e4, just like we're going to plant a knight on e5. Typically in the Dutch, the battle of the knights in the center do often happen. White is going to argue black's king is weak. Black is going to argue he can use the open file, semi-open file, for his rook to attack white's king. Again, king h8, rook g8, attack on the open file. That would be a nice plan for black, to be honest. Now, both sides continue just developing, getting their pieces out, and white is first to plant his knight in the center of the board. This did not happen in the game, but question. If knight takes knight, how would you recapture? I'll give you a second to think. Some of you may be automatic, other people may be thinking. It's good to think in chess. The right answer is f takes e5. Why is f takes e5 correct? Well, for 2 reasons. The basic reason, you not only gain a tempo on the knight, you also hit the pawn so you could collect. The more positional and structural reasoning is you want your pawn chain facing the side of the board that you're attacking. So we're attacking on the king side. We want our pawn chain faced towards the king side. That's just a general rule of thumb. Yes, principles are made to be broken in chess. That's when brilliant moves are found. But, more often than not, we can say 8 times out of 10, 9 times out of 10, it's a good rule of thumb to follow. If you're short on time, it makes the decision easier sometimes. So we do not get that. We do get c takes d4. Using the positional reasoning, which pawn would you recapture with? If you said e pawn, you are a genius. If you said c pawn, you're still a genius because it's not a bad move. Knight c6 was an interesting alternative also. Kind of like this move because it hits the queen, it hits the pawn. Queen moves, you take the pawn with check, and then you collect more pawns. Not that one, that one's guarded by the knight. But they would have to go queen e8, and then you take with the e pawn, and you are threatening e7. and then say they move up, maybe you have like b3 and bishop a3 to try to squeeze in the rook. Interesting continuation for sure. He takes with the e-pawn, so we get a more simplistic game, and we get knight e4, planting his own knight in the center. Rook f3, the famous rook lift in the famous Dutch, f-pawn up 2, rook up 2, over, attack, checkmate. That is like the basics of the Dutch, one would hope. So here black should go knight d to f6. Reason being, you want to connect your knights in the center of the board, create kind of a bind in the center. Instead, he goes f6. I don't know if you've seen my short, but never play f6 against the Dutch. Bad things do happen. I don't know why people play f6 again. Like, it just doesn't even look like an appealing move, yet you have very good players playing f6 sometimes against the Dutch. I don't know. It doesn't make sense. Like, just looks bad, right? The knight can't go anywhere. Just looks awkward. I don't know. Beats me. Knight c6, saving the knight. You do not want to trade knights because your knight is better than theirs. Their knight cannot really go anywhere. So decline the trade with a tempo. Nice tempo. Forcing the queen to e8 as well. And now rook over to h3. So when I was looking at this line, or this game, one line I calculated that was cool was queen b5, hitting the pawn. What should black do? If you said e6, you are correct. If you said queen f7, this was the whole point of the queen b5 move, right? Queen f7, do you see the tactic here? I think it would be called a deflection tactic. I think it's categorized as deflection, even though they're not forced to take. But you do win a pawn in hopes to deflect them, because then you take the other pawn with check. They move their king somewhere. Now they're left with these beautiful doubled pawns. You know, some people call these double isolated pawns. Other called them connected passed pawns. Depends how cocky you are. But we do not get that in the game. Would have been interesting. But yeah, queen b5, e6. Do not get tunnel vision. Do not play hope chess. They play e6. And then why is your queen on b5? Great question. Impossible to answer correctly. Rook to h3. Just basic Dutch ideas. Making it easy. Little bit of time needed to be spent. Not much. And then we get a5. This is hope chess in and of itself as well. Black is trying to trap the knight here on c6. But I mean, look at the incoming storm towards that king. That is not going to be fun. Now, tough move to understand. Knight takes e4. So try to pause and think about why this move was played. Think about what you would do if d takes e4. Think about what you would do if f takes e4. And then we will explain. So f takes e4 is the lesser of two evils. You know, black has to pick his poison, and f takes e4 is the recommended move. This is known as a clearance trade. So here you want to go f5. Reason being is, well, remember, our pawns were on the dark squares, so our dark squared bishop was garbage. So we bring our pawn to the light square, and now our bishop is good. Just like that. Bad bishop can become a good bishop. What a crazy concept chess is. So f5, the bishop is now good. This pawn is locking black's pawn structure, because you got to think about it. Black's pawn structure was bad. When he takes with the f-pawn, you're voluntarily undoubling his pawns. So if you play a move like maybe you were thinking queen g4 coming into the attack, all of a sudden he plays f5. Now his structure is something indeed to brag about. He's going to bring his knight over to f6, not getting a tempo on the queen because the queen's going to move. It's hit by the pawn, but it's going to be a good knight on f6 nonetheless. And this is just not good for white. So you have to act fast, freeze black's pawns. Then you get everything you want. Then queen g4 and the bishop diagonal, checkmate, everything becomes good. Same thing, if d takes e5, well, this is a clearance trade. So the move is d5. You might say, well, d5 makes a little less sense. On the surface, it might, but this knight was kind of getting squeezed in. You don't want to lose it. And now you're threatening to back up knight d4, knight e6, knight f5, and all of a sudden it's a great knight. This knight, yes, it became better, but it is still not good. Our knight will crush we'll take the spotlight in comparison to black's knight. So instead we get, well, we do get f5. And then knight e5, a wild move, too wild a move. Black should have just simmered down, you know, relax. It's not that serious, but instead he just goes crazy, knight e5. And the point is you're creating a discovery. So you don't want to trade knights because you'd rather draw his queen over to the queen side further away from his king. So, I mean, he kind of just invited a loss, black did, because after pawn takes knight, queen takes knight, Believe it or not, black resigns on the next move. Can you see the move white played to make black resign? If you said e6, you are correct. There's no need to rush on the attack. Just play sturdy chess, e6. People do not have fun when they can't move. Black cannot move here. The bishop is just trapped in. The king is then trapped in because it cannot escape on f7. So the king side is just very stuck and very squeezed in. And now all of white's pieces are just going to activate. You might say, is it really resignable? Well, kinda, yes. Because you're going to checkmate them. And if they go queen e8, only move to stop checkmate, then I would just recommend pinning them. You're going to be threatening bishop h6, which they cannot stop. So getting out of the pin would be sensible. And now queen h4. Remember, dark square rotation for the queen is very typical in the Dutch. Referenced in my other videos. I'll stop referencing them anymore. But here you just can't stop checkmate. I mean, h6, just take, and checkmate. And yeah. So black resigns after e6. Kind of a cool game, a simple game. I like these Dutch games where the attack just presses on. I mean, this game was less than 20 moves. That is a banger. So I hope you enjoyed. You can play the Stonewall as white or as black. Pretty interesting, systems-based opening, easy to learn. Give it a try as white. Let me know. Do you guys like it better as black or as white? I like it better as black personally, but, you know, maybe that's just because I like e4, f4 so much. This has one of the two. This has f4 at least. So, yeah, let me know what you think. Hope you enjoyed the video. Have a great day.